Good morning and welcome to Freebie Friday. This is episode number 4. And today we're going to talk about character development and specifically how to take your two-dimensional characters and make them into real people. So stick around. Got a lot to talk about. Alright, now unless you are currently driving or operating heavy machinery or, wrestling alligators, I want you to close your eyes. Now imagine that you're sitting down in a small, deserted diner, and the waitress comes over and she places the drink that you ordered in front of you, and then she places a second glass in front of you, and as you look at her kind of confused, she just quietly walks away. And when you turn your head back around, there's a stranger sitting across from you. They pick up the second drink, they take a sip, and they say, "Hi, I'm your new main character. Let's teach you everything you need to know about me and my story." You have an opportunity here. You can open your eyes. But you have an opportunity here that's really no holds barred. Your character is now here with you in the flesh, and you get to use this to your advantage. Getting to know somebody in real life, you ask them questions, you observe them, you hang out with them. And if it's somebody that you really want to know, you're going to have a lot of questions. And if they just appear in your life, you're going to have a lot of questions right up front. And this little mentally visual situation that I just had you imagine is one of the ones that I use when I'm developing my characters. I find that just asking questions or coming up with things on the fly, it can tend to keep the characters flat. Because if I'm in the middle of a story, for example, and I have to introduce a new character, maybe it's a clerk at a store that the main character enters, I just come up with them on the spot. I give them a quick name, I give them their uniform. They say thank you, please come again or whatever. Then maybe they give them the wrong change, just have some little quirk, and then they're gone. But as I've continued to develop characters, I try to remember what happens in real life. And there is a convenience store that's on the way out of town from me that I don't go to very often. I think I've been there twice in the last year, actually, like on the way out of town. But the people that are in there are still real people. They have lives, they have a history, they have things going on. Maybe they're having a bad day that I happen to just walk into. And keeping these kind of things in mind when you're developing your characters, especially the smaller part, the sub-characters or the NPCs basically that aren't going to have any effect on the main plot line, they're still real and they need to be real, and your main characters need to interact with them as though they are real. And this helps your larger characters become real to the reader. And while character development is a very important aspect, it's not the biggest aspect, there are some stories that are well told, well written, well received, and they have fairly flat characters. But that's rare. And it shouldn't be something that you set out for. So I play this little mental game in the diner. I have a couple situations that I use just so it's not boring, and you can come up with your own. But you want to sit down because you want to ask them questions, but you want to be able to observe them. I can ask my main character, for example, I can ask him in my head, 3,000 questions. But I'm not going to know everything I need to know just by asking these questions. And this is where a lot of people kind of go off, because asking questions is great. I can get to know you by asking the right questions, but I'm not going to know how you really interact. Does my main character, does he roll his eyes a lot? If the waitress walks by, does he give him a snooty look and stop talking? Things like that. If I play it out in my head that we're actually having this conversation, I get to see these kind of things. If I want to see how they actually interact with a group of people, maybe I'll add more people to the diner, or we'll go for a walk, or we'll be in a busier restaurant, or something where it puts them in a situation that I want to see how they're going to react, because I know that somewhere along the plot line of my story this is going to happen. And it's easier to know ahead of time, because you can start laying the foundation for these little traits in your story, so that it's not a surprise to your reader that, this whole time I pictured, Jack as this suave guy, but he really clammed up when there was more than 2 people around, and that just didn't seem like him, because it wasn't until you made it that way. But if you go off and start planting these little seeds, by the time this happens, yeah, I kind of saw that coming, the reader would say. He always, seemed to avert his eyes or roll his eyes or put his hands in his pockets whenever somebody came by. So this wasn't like a shock. It wasn't out of character. And by doing that, not only do you get to know these characters inside and out, but so do your readers, while they get to add their own little things and their own visuals, and it makes these characters come to life. And I'm sure that you've read books before where, you get done with the book and you're like, oh, this character here, if he was real, I'd go out and have a beer with him. And that's the kind of reaction that you want from your larger characters, your main character, protagonist, antagonist, the love interest, those kind of things. These are the type of reactions that you want. You want people to either really love them or really hate them, especially if they're in a challenge and they have to go through something. You want the reader to be able to root for them and pull for them, or root against them, whatever the case may be. It draws the reader in more when they have a believable person to side with. So we go back to this diner. Now we're in the diner, we got our main character there. What exactly is it that we have to do? Well, we're going to ask questions, and if you are in the 5-draft method class, when I talk about character development, there is a download that I give you, and it's got about 120 different questions, and I'm going to cover some of those here now for you. But you'll have this questionnaire, and you really kind of get all aspects of who this person is and what they're about. And you start off with some personal information. Obviously you need to know their name, their birthday, things like that. But we start with their appearance. We get into their job and their hobbies, their family and friends, their morals, what they love, what they hate, their relationships, any problems or issues that they're having, how they handle those, what are their big challenges in life, who are their enemies. So the questionnaire really is a great way to get to know who it is you're sitting across from. But you cannot forget that while you're asking these questions and coming up with the answers, that you're observing as well. And that's where the mental movie comes into play, because you get to see them. And so if I ask a question like, do you have a nickname? And my main character in my head kind of, blushes and turns red and puts his head down. I know that he has a nickname, and I know that it's embarrassing for him. So now I really want to know what it is. Well, so are you, reader. When you put that aspect in, that your main character is blushing, because somebody mentioned his nickname, that just adds credibility instead of just, oh, his nickname was Nitro. It's how he reacts to it. And these are the kind of things that when you're focusing on your story and trying to get the drafts done, that you might not remember to add in unless you've already gone through it. And that's what the whole point of the diner situation is. But let's go over some of the questions. Obviously, there's going to be a couple that you have to know. And names and stuff like that are, of course, important. But I've written books where the main character didn't even have a name. So the mandatory one, number one, what about you is heroic? And the important thing before I continue, the important thing you want to remember here is that this character sat down across from you. So you don't get to settle for one word, yes or no answers, maybes, kind ofs. You really have to draw the complete, full answer out of them. And you're going to be surprised. You might have this idea of your character, and then you sit down and ask these questions, and your responses may surprise you. And I've had characters completely 180 on me, and I've liked them even more, so I kept it, or I've hated it, and I'm like, okay, I need a different character, and you start over. But really get into their heads, because that's what they're there for. They sat across from you, said, here's my brain, pick it, anything you want to know. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And you're never going to get that in the real world, so take advantage of it. Don't settle for, yes, no. So if I ask you, what about you is heroic, don't settle for nothing. Something about your main character has to be heroic. It has to. That's the whole point of the story. They are going to end up being a hero in some form or fashion. So what is it that you need to aim for? The second question, what about you is social? Now, a lot of people aren't social. There are many introverts, myself included. There are many people who will answer with you, I don't like people. Whatever it is, you need to know, because they're going to be in social situations. Unless you're writing a single character book, there's going to be a social situation. So how are these people social? How is your character social? And you follow that one up with, what do you like about people? And this point, you really want to watch and observe, because their mannerisms and their reactions are going to tell you way more than the words will. So those three really are crucial to building the character, because they're not only going to tell you about the character, it's going to tell you how they react in different situations that are going to come up in virtually every story. From there, you want to go personal. What is your name? Your real name? What is the name on your birth certificate? Is that the name you go by? If it's not, what do you go by? If your name on the birth certificate is Robert, but you prefer Bobby, that's what I want to know. What is your nickname? How did you get it? What do you look like? And start building them, as they tell you. Oh, I'm 5'2" and 475 pounds. I have receding hairline. Used to be blonde, but now it's brown. I got green eyes. Actually start putting this character together. And then you want to ask them things that you would want to be able to observe without actually talking to them. So things like, on a normal day, how do you dress? And then you take that. Okay, so if you have to dress up, what does that mean to you? If you have to dress down, what does that mean? What about when you sleep? What do you wear when you sleep? Do you wear jewelry? Do you own a car? What kind of car? Describe the car. All of these little things that are personal to them. And then you want to get, of course, into the familial questions. So what's their family like? Who's their mother? Who's their father? What were they like? Are they still alive? Are they still married? Were they ever married? Do you have any siblings? Blah, blah, blah. Talk about the family. Ask about the family. And then you want to ask about their childhood, because every person has a history, right? So we need to develop a history for our character. So what was your first memory? Growing up, what was your favorite toy? Who was your best friend in 3rd grade? Or, these kind of things. Are they still your friend? And then you get in from childhood, we get into adolescent. How old were you when you went on your first date? How do you feel about authority? What clique did you fit into best in high school? Who was your idol? Did you play any sports? Things like this. Then we get into more of adulthood questions about their job. Do you have a job? What is it? Do you like it? What's your boss's name? What are they like? What are your coworkers like? Do you save money or do you spend all your money? And don't forget also, when you're asking these questions, to ask the question and then find out why. So if I ask you, do you tend to save money or spend money? The answer is going to be one or the other. Well, I tend to spend my money. Okay, why? Why aren't you a saver? Is your bank account empty? And why? The why is very important, especially on some of these that can possibly be answered with a 1 or 2 word or a yes or no answer. But don't forget, you have to dig in. And we start with, from there, after we've kind of gone through their childhood, their adolescence, into adulthood, if they're that old, into what they like and what they don't like. What hobbies do you have? We'll ask things like, what kind of music do you listen to? What's your favorite song? What's your favorite book? Do you watch TV? Do you get into politics? Where do you hang out? Where do you hang out with your friends? Is it different? What annoys you? What's your favorite weather? Favorite time of day? What's your favorite food? Your favorite drink? If you could have any meal right now, what would it be? You ask about their pets. If they have them, find out what kind they are, how many they have, what do they like about them. Ask about their habits, and what habits about other people annoy them. Do they have any pet peeves? And of course, we have to get into sex and intimacy, especially if they are of age. Ask them, What do you consider yourself? Are you straight? Are you gay? Are you bi? Are you something else? Why? Don't forget the why. Who was the first person you had sex with? When did it happen? How did it go? What did it like? You know? Have you ever had a gay experience? If yes, how did that go? Who was it with? What was it like? Do you have any sexual fantasies that other people know about? What are the sexual fantasies you have that people don't know about? You want to ask, things like, what's your ideal mate? What's romantic? What is something that you want to do with a partner? What do you look for in a partner? Do you have a partner? What's the worst thing you've done to someone you loved? That one is actually one of my favorite questions, both from the visual response and the actual response. But you ask them about their recent relationship. Who was it with? It doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship, but the most recent relationship, find out who it was with. What was that person like? What was their name? Is this something that is still ongoing? Is it over? If it was over, you want to find out what happened, why, because this could bleed into your story. And you want to know ahead of time what's going on. You want to ask them about drugs and alcohol as well. Have they ever tried things? What do they like? What do they don't like? Do they have a favorite type of drink? They smoke, things like that. And also, we want to find out about the morals of our characters. What one thing in your past are you the most ashamed of? Or what are you most proud of? When was the last time you were in an argument? Who was it with? What was it for? Things like this. You also want to ask questions that are just weird. Are you supernatural? What did you do that made you supernatural? Are you magic? Do you have any magical items? Don't forget, we're trying to get into these people's heads. We want to know who they are. So you're going to ask them, what are their goals? Long term, short term. If you were to gain an obscenely large amount of money, what would you do with it? What do you do when you get bored? Are you ticklish? What are your bad habits? What are your good habits? What's the worst injury you've ever received? And how did it happen? All of these questions and a lot more are in the download on the course that when you sign up for, you'll get. But it all goes to show you that these people become real, and just like any other person out there that you would interact with on a normal day, that's how you need to start seeing your characters. And the more you see your character as a real person, the more your readers will also see your character as a real person. And when that happens, that is true literary magic. And we can get you there. But for now, we're going to sign off. Go ahead, stop by the course at extradraft.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get advance notice about the Freebie Friday topic of that week. You'll get information from behind the scenes, where the course is, what's going on, all exciting news and happenings. So that'll do it for this week. We will see you next Friday. In the meantime, have fun and write words.